Great. Okay. So yeah, so this week in Semantic UI, we're going to have a look at menus. Okay. So yeah, menus in Semantic UI. There's loads of different options for creating menus in Semantic UI, and there's some basic options, and then there's some drop-down menus that we can create as well. So this week, really, we're just going to focus on menus because there's kind of so many different kinds. You'll try out a few of them in the labs. Okay, so we'll talk about menus, and there's a short quiz, and then we'll talk about drop-down menus, and I'm going to get you to create one as well. So a simple menu can be created in Semantic UI using the .ui.menu class. So you can see here, this particular menu is just a basic 3-item menu. And like you might guess there, you can have as many items as you want. So if you wanted a 5-item menu, it would be UI 5-item menu instead. Here we have this applied onto a div that's surrounding 3 different links. But you could probably also put this onto a nav as well, because obviously in the last section, we learned all about using those semantic structural elements like nav and header and footer and so on. So nav would work just as well, and probably actually be a little bit better than just a div. Okay, so you could do div class equals UI 3-item menu or nav. And then within that div or nav, you'd have all of your different menu links in there. Okay, you can see other than these classes, they look just the same as normal. So you have your A and your href part, and then the link that the person's going to actually click on. And this is our WIT website that we've worked on in a few labs. What's also added in there on each menu item is the class item. Okay, so you can see they all have the item class, and then they also, the current page will have the active class. The active class highlights whatever page you're currently on. So I'll show you actually an example where you can see what it'll look like on the next slide. So this is an example of a vertical menu. So we've got 3 menu items, and they're kind of one on top of the other rather than all side by side. And this one has the active class on it in this case, and it's also red. So if it was just active item, it would have the gray background that you can see there, hopefully. And the fact that we've said red as well, it also highlights it with a red text and a red label as well. Okay, so we often want to do that to highlight the active one. So it shows the user which page they're on, or in this case, which part of their email they're in, and so on. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense about active items. And this menu then, just to point out a few other things about it, like I said, it's a vertical menu. We've specified here vertical when we created the menu at the top. And just note here as well, you don't necessarily always have to say how many items you're going to have in the menu. In the last one, we said 3-item menu, and that will just, it'll create a menu that's kind of the full width of the screen, and it'll split it up into 3 parts. And like I said, if I said 5, it would split it up into 5 parts and so on. But it's not necessary to specify how many menu items you're going to have. So this one just says vertical, and then you can just put as many as you need within it. And also, yeah, here we've also just applied some labels as well. So these labels are just put in with this div class equals UI label. Okay, and that gives it this little label icon. This one is a pointing label, and as you see there, it gets this little arrow that kind of points to the current thing. So loads of different options there. This menu then is a pointing menu. So you can see here again, we have the WIT menu that we've been working on a few times, and we've got 3 different menu items. Like I said, if I'd said 3-item menu, it'll kind of spread them out across the width of the page. But if I don't specify that, it'll just kind of, it'll make the box, I suppose, as big as the content needs to be. So for example, you can see about width is a little bit bigger than the home one. So it'll just keep them the same size. And a pointing menu does a little kind of pointing thing when it's on the current page. Okay, so again, we have active item on the home page here, and you can see there that this is the home page. The thing with the active class that just to keep in mind when you're doing this in the labs is it doesn't do it automatically for you or anything. Unfortunately, it's not that smart. So you yourself will just have to remember on the home page to put the active class on the home link. On the About With page, you'll need to put the active class onto the About With link, and so on for all the others. Okay. And lastly, then, this is a tabular menu. So a tabular menu lays it out so that it looks like little tabs, as you see there. And again, yeah, the active class in this case is on the home page. You can see this one is also top attached, and that just means it will attach the tabs at the top. You can also attach them at the bottom as well. Okay. Any questions on menus so far? No. Okay, good stuff. Okay, so on to this little short quiz then. There's 4 questions here, so you can join in. I'll just pop the code in the chat there. 3837. So share it again without the sound, just in case. I can't remember if it has music, but I don't want to deafen anyone like I did before. Not working for you. Okay, what's going wrong, James? Is it just that when you go to menti.com, you can't get into it? Is that it? Or DNS error? Oh, okay. Could be your internet, maybe. Yeah, just try again. Go to www.menti.com. Don't leave out the www part, just in case. That might be it. Oh, it's working now. Okay, great. Good stuff. Okay, so I'm not sure how many I should be expecting here. Yeah, there's 33 in the call and 17 here so far. So I'll hang on another couple of minutes. Definitely want as many people as possible to try and challenge the jacks. That's what we need to do today. The jacks actually have how many are there? This one, just looking at the thing here now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, total monopoly. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So who's the favorite? Okay. Okay, so we have 20 people here now. Yeah, there's a few more joining. Okay, I'll just give it another few seconds and we get started then. Okay. Brilliant. Right, let's get started. And if you're joining later, I think you still be able to join in whatever stage. Okay, so here's the first one. Okay, great. So, well, kind of half and half there. Have it right. And the word link, I threw that one in, is a bit of a tricky one because it is a link that you're adding the style onto, but it's item is the class that you're looking for. So yeah, so UI item will work on any items that are within a menu. Okay, great. So let's see after that first one how we're getting on. Not a jack. Very good. Okay, so we've got two jacks. I'd like to see this not a jack person rise to the top, whoever you are. Best of luck. Okay, great. So next one. Nice. Yeah, well done. Well done. Vertical is correct. Yeah, and most people got that. It did actually have a pointing label within it, so I could kind of see why some might have chosen this one. But yeah, it is a vertical menu. Okay. Oh, there's two now, jacks. Great. Okay. Brilliant. Dylan, you're in there as well. Good stuff. Okay. Great. So next one. Yeah, brilliant. Very good. Yeah, most people got that. And that is the correct one. The active class. Yeah. Okay, well done. Okay, I think Dylan, we have to pin all our hopes on you here of winning. Although maybe not a jack and bongo. And by the way, I like this name, Barnacle. Boy, whoever that is. Very good. Okay, final question. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Um, so that is a pointing menu. It actually does look quite similar to the tabular menu. The only difference really is that the tab has a little arrow pointing from it. So that is, yeah, that's the one that you just saw, pointing menu. Okay, so this one could be a bit of an upset. Now let's see. Oh, Dylan. Oh, well done. It's not that I'm against the jacks, it's just nice to see a bit of variety in the top. That's great. Well done, everybody. Good stuff, and well done, Dylan. Brilliant. Okay, good stuff. Great. So it was a jack. Fair enough. Dylan is just a pretend jack. No, well done, Dylan. So any questions on any of that before we move on to talking about drop-down menus? Okay. Okay, so yeah, moving on then to drop-down menus. So it's, I suppose, essentially it's going to be kind of a very similar menu, but just with some extra classes applied into it. I laughed, Jason, don't worry. Okay, so this is an example of a kind of a simple enough drop-down menu. So yeah, we need to add some classes before the menu and item classes. You can see within our drop-down here, we have a fairly basic menu. So we have div class equals menu and items in it just the same as normal. None of them have the active class, but other than that, it's pretty much the same as normal. And so the other classes that we're adding in then are, first of all, a div around the whole lot that will create the drop-down menu. So on this one, we have UI selection drop-down. There's a few different types of drop-downs, but this one is one where you can select one option. So that's kind of a basic enough one. So yeah, first of all, that div that creates the drop-down. Next, then we have a form input. Forms are going to be our final topic next week. So we'll talk a little bit more about forms and inputs and all that next week. But for now, I suppose an input is, it takes in some kind of value. So in this case, we want it to store the value, whatever the person picks on the form, whether it's, you know, female, male, other, or whatever. Whatever they pick on the form gets stored into this input here. But an input normally looks like a text box. So we don't want the text box to actually appear in the middle of our nice drop down. We want to store the value, but without seeing the box for the input. Okay, so that's why it's hidden. But like I said, it will still store the value. Next, then we have an icon that will create this little down arrow. So this little arrow that you see up here, that adds that, and it just lets the person know that if I click on this, it's going to drop down. And next, then the default text, and that's, again, it's a div with the class default text on it. And this gives a little hint about what the person is picking in this drop down. And you can see it adds it in a kind of a grayed out way, like you see there. Okay, and lastly then we'd have our div at the end that closes the drop-down menu. So that selection drop-down div should surround everything else. Okay, and lastly then with drop-down menus, similar to, what did we do last week that needed a bit of JavaScript? Oh yeah, when the we added a table sort onto the table. I suppose anywhere really where you're clicking on something and then something happens, it's usually a piece of JavaScript that's needed. So last week we added that piece of JavaScript that was going to sort the table columns when we clicked on whatever table heading at the top, it would sort them based on that. And similar here, when we're clicking on this drop-down menu, we need some JavaScript to make it work. So when you do start using drop-down menus, you'll also need to add this script that you see here. This script should go down at the bottom of the page, usually just before the closing body tag. Okay, so it's within the body section, but just at the very end. And similar to last week, it just really targets the drop-down. So in this case, it's doing it by the class by saying .ui.dropdown. It's targeting any drop-down menus on the page, and then it's going to call the drop-down function on that element. Okay. Like I said last week, you don't need to understand really anything about JavaScript at this stage. We're going to get into that next semester, but All you need to know, I suppose, is just that if you want your drop-down menu to work, you'll need to have this script at the bottom of the page. Okay, and a few other types of drop-down menus then. We can have a search drop-down. I'm going to say it's identical. Yeah, pretty much identical to the other one, just with the addition of this word search in the opening div. And what that does, like you see here, is it lets you search for items within the list. So in this case, it's the countries, and obviously that's a pretty long list to kind of scroll through. So if you start typing I or E at the top here, it'll narrow down the selection for you. Okay. So that's a very useful one, especially for longer menus. We can also set it to select multiple items. So if I wanted to pick a few different countries, I'd add the word multiple into the opening div here. And like you see here, then you can click on a few different countries and they get added in. There's a load of other bits added onto this one as well. So just to talk about those a little bit, floating just means that it's floating to one side. Okay. What else have we got there? Search and selection we had before. Labeled icon button, it adds this little icon to it when it gets selected. And drop down and multiple we talked about. Yeah, okay. And we can, lastly then we can add a header and a divider inside the menu as well. So this one here has a header, which is this part here, this filter by county. And you can see that here in another div inside the menu. So after the opening div for the menu, we have a div with the class header, then an icon to show this little tags icon, and then filter by county. And after that, we have this line as well, a divider, which again can be useful if you have longer menus that you want to kind of split them up a little bit. For that, you just put in a div with no contents. So you can see there you have div class equals divider and then a closing div straight away. And that just adds that gray line that you see there. Okay, so in the labs this week, you're going to be creating, first of all, a basic kind of menu, and then you'll be doing a second lab for a drop-down menu. So there's an exercise I'm going to get you to do now. I think we're actually a good bit ahead of schedule here, so you can have a bit of time to do this. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and I want you to try and create a menu that looks like this when you click on it. So it'll just say select friend at the start, and then when I click it, I want to see a list of people, and each person should have a little image like that next to their name. Instead of these names, it should be the names of whoever is in your breakout room, and then an image for each person as well. So it can be an image of you if you have one, or if you don't have one, just Google an image and anything at all would be grand, okay? So to figure out how to do this, you can use our lab steps. There's an example that's quite similar to this. So have a look through our lab steps and have a look through the Semantic UI website as well. Okay. Yeah, and I think we'll go with. Oh yeah, I need to actually just. So I'm just going to give you a start file for this as well, and I'll put it into the chat there. That's it there, menu.zip. So it kind of has the Semantic UI page set up, and it has a container, and you just need to add your menu into that. Okay. Can everybody see that? Because last week there was a couple of people who couldn't see it in the chat. And if there's anyone who can't see it in the chat, I'll just put it on Slack as well. So if you can't see that, just send a message in the chat and let me know. And yeah, we'll go with 10 minutes for that, and we'll come back then and compare notes after in a few minutes. Okay. So let me know first. I'm going to set up the breakout rooms now, but if there are any questions on what you need to do, just let me know. Okay, it's 5 per room. Okay, so you should be seeing the option to join those now. Let me know once you're in there if you do have any questions. I'll come in, talk to you. Okay.